Hi everyone, I'm Bianca.
And I'm Rosina, and welcome to
Twins in Stitches. Today's video is going to be a beginner's crochet crash course.
Yeah, so I'll be showing everything you need to know, how to start a piece, the different types of stitches, and how to finish. And don't worry, this is completely beginner friendly.
So let's get started.
When it comes to crochet, there are pretty much only two things you need. So first we have our yarn, and then we have our hook. So our hook, you must check what hook size suits your yarn, and you can do this simply by reading your information sheet from the yarn. So here we can see that this says 3.5 to 4.5 millimeters. So our hook size can be any size between these. Now this hook, we can see, well, to be honest, it's been quite scratched off over its use. This is definitely my most used hook. But it says 4 millimeters. So this is a 4 millimeter hook, so this is fine to go with this yarn. Essentially, all of your projects are going to start the exact same way, and that is with what is known as a slip knot. So, what is a slip knot? It is essentially a knot that starts our work. How to make a slip knot? So what we're going to do is put the yarn in front of our 4 fingers, open up our fingers, and wrap it around. Okay, so this is how we've started. We've got the yarn going in front, around, then finishing behind those other 2 fingers, right? Perfect. Now we're going to flip our fingers around, and now we can kind of put this through just to secure it. We are going to, with our other hand, with these 2 fingers, is go ahead and pull the underneath. So what we're doing is we're grabbing the underneath yarn and pulling it through, and we're going to stretch it. I will pull it up a bit. So we have this almost triangle formation. You see that? So we pull that through, then what we do is pinch underneath again and get this yarn, and we just pull it. And we have this sort of 8 shape, and now what we do is we hold onto this and we just pull this, okay? And we've got a loop. Now this is too big, so the idea is, right, we'll put this on a hook. Now, stitches are the size of your hook, so we need to make this smaller. And how we do that is we simply pull this. We will pull this yarn until it seems about the size of our hook. That seems right. Perfect. And you can adjust it here. So I'll show you how to do that again. Slip knots can be a bit difficult to understand and to a lot of yarn going everywhere. So you have your yarn in front of your fingers. You wrap it around your first 2 fingers. Flip our hands over. We can secure it like this. We could leave it like this, but we secure it like this so that it's a bit easier to handle. Put your fingers underneath this first yarn and bring up this one so that it's almost like a triangle shape. We go in again and get the yarn, and we just pull this up simply. And we have this slip knot. Now, to remember, a slip knot, you will always be able to pull one end to make it smaller. So we do that so that it is now the size of our hook. And this is how we start. So we have our first stitch, essentially, onto our hook. So now that we have our slip knot, we'll be considering how to actually hold your hook. So your physical hook, you want to hold with your dominant hand. So I'm right-handed, so I'll be holding this with my right hand. Just hold it. There isn't a particular right way to hold this, just whatever really feels comfortable. I like to put my thumb near the front, near the top, as with my index finger. And now in terms of the other hand, we will place our yarn over our fingers, like we did for the slip knot, and we will clutch the yarn with these 2 bottom fingers. So this is really making sure the yarn stays taut and does not move out of place. In terms of our other fingers, our index finger remains here and will act as a sort of lever, going up and down to feed the yarn through. And then with our middle finger and thumb, we hold our piece. So we have this set up. These fingers curled under, our index finger, which will be able to go up and down to move for stitches, and then this, our middle finger and our thumb, which will be holding this in place. So to see that again, we hold this in any way that's really comfortable. We then wrap our bottom 2 fingers around the yarn. We pull up using our index finger, and then we grab with our ring finger and middle finger, and we are in this formation. We will now be discussing how we chain. So, a chain is the foundation of any piece we will do. First, we will hold our yarn as we stated before. So, wrap the yarn under these two fingers, use your index finger as a lever, and then you hold your piece with your, like the tail end or whatever you're working on, with your middle finger and thumb. So we've got this formation. And now we're first going to yarn over. Now yarn overing is probably the most important skill you'll learn for crochet. Yarn over basically means putting yarn onto your hook. And we do this by doing a sort of whoosh movement. And that's yarn over. That's all it is. Yarn over. Yarn over can also look like this. So yarn further down the hook. But ideally you want to kind of put it in, like, I guess, the sweet spot of near the hook of the hook. So yarn over, just swish. You can do it the other way around if you find that more comfortable. I personally much prefer this way. So this is a yarn over, right? So yarn over, just that movement, that's one yarn over. So after we have yarned over, we put this through our stitch. Now this is a knot, but it counts as our first stitch. So what we do is we put this through our first stitch. And how we do this is with this hand, we just move this downwards, 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 downwards. And we want to basically put this yarn into this stitch, right? So you see, this has a gap, right? It has a hole. You can put yarn through here. So with the hook shape, you are putting it through, and you're putting it through that initial stitch is what we're doing. And that's one chain. Don't worry, I'll show that again. So we yarn over, so the whoosh movement, and then we put the hook down, down, down. And I always find it very useful to kind of turn the hook inwards when chaining, just because then you really get it into this, I guess, ideal spot. You see this gap here? You get to put it right in, and you go as such. So yarn over. This hand, you move down, 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 and you put it through. And we do that again. Yarn over, down, 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 and we put it through. Now, like I said, you can yarn over, then kind of turn it inwards. It can make it easier to put it in sometimes, but really, all that matters is that you yarn over, and you manage to put this. If you see something else, you're putting it through this stitch. There's a gap in this stitch, you're putting it through. Right through that hole. And that's what a chain is. And you chain your desired length. So you can chain 20. For example, if you want to start with 20 stitches, the more you chain, the bigger your piece will be width-wise. That's one. And then yarn over, and then we put it through. Yarn over, put it through. If you're struggling with it being taut, make sure that you have the formation of your hand correct, and that can really help it being nice and taut. And you continue and continue for the amount of stitches you want. I have completed my chain, and I have chained 16 stitches. How can we count these? You can see there are V shapes, so if we look more closely, this, for example, is one V. This is another V. This again is another V, and another V. Each V is a stitch, so you can count these V's. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to the end, and that will be 16 here, or however many you've done. That's how you count your stitches. So this is your chain, and it's the foundation of all of your work. So we know how to chain, but what's next? How do we actually make it grow this way? So we know how to make the project grow this way, but how about this way? Now, this is where we have different types of stitches, and I'll be first showing you how to do what is called the single crochet. So let's do it. How to do a single crochet? We first have to put our hook into a stitch. Now, as you remember, the stitches are the V shapes, right? So this here is one stitch, this V is another stitch, another stitch, another stitch, and so on and so forth. Our first V is this one. Right, this V shape. Now, what we do is, for a single crochet, we put our hook straight into the stitch. So how we do this is, I like to hold the stitch just so I have more control. And what I do essentially is just rotate my wrist so that the hook can fit within the stitch, right? And now I have 2 loops on this hook. Then what I will do is yarn over the whoosh motion and put it through that first hoop, that first loop. Right, so that's what I've got. And now I yarn over again and put it through the next two. Oops. Through the next two. That's what a single crochet is essentially. Let's do that again. So we put the hook into the stitch. Into a stitch. We then yarn over, bring this through the first loop. We then have two loops and we yarn over and bring this through both loops. We can do one and then the other, that's easier, or we can do two at the same time. So let's do that again. We get our hook, we rotate our wrist and we put this into the next stitch. So the next stitch you can always identify as the next V. This is not it because we have a stitch that's already here. It's the next stitch, so it's this stitch. So we go in, right? We have two loops. We yarn over, put this through, right? And then we yarn over again. And we continue this on throughout the whole row and all our chains. So one, up, through, and through. Right, so we put B, go in, two loops, we yarn over, only the first, we yarn over, through both. And this we could do for the whole chain. We have almost finished, but we have two stitches left. Now we're going to discuss how we sort out the end stitches because sometimes these can be quite difficult to spot. So the next V is here. So we put our hook in, we yarn over, we bring this through just the first stitch, and then we yarn over and bring this through the next two. This here is also a stitch. We cannot miss this out, if not we'll end up decreasing. So we're 15 stitches instead of 16. So we go in again. This one can be harder to get because it's next to the slip knot. But what we do is we go in, we yarn over, bring this through the first, yarn over, bring this through both. And this is our first row. This is our first row of work. A lovely single crochet row. Now, we may be wondering, what happens when we get to the end of a row? What do we do? What we do is we chain. So we remember how to do a chain. We yarn over and we pull the yarn over through our stitch. And then we turn our work around. Now, the reason for this chain is essentially just to get a neater turn and to be able to turn more easily. Now, this is our work of our single crochets. If we look here, we've got the V's again from the chain. So the stitches never change. Look, the stitches are always these V's. We always go into these V's. Okay, so now that we've successfully done our single crochet, let's move on to the half double crochet, our next stitch up. In order to do this, we identify our stitches. So here we can see the next stitch we're going into would be just this one here, right? When it comes to stitches, we go through both loops now. On the chain, we don't, but for the rest, we do. So now we go through both loops. Okay. So for our half double crochet, what differs from the single is that we yarn over before we go in. So this whoosh motion, we do it, and then, like before, we go into our first stitch. Okay. So now we've got 3 hoops, well, basically 4 because these are 2. And like before again, we yarn over and bring this through our first stitch only. Okay, perfect. And now we've got 3 stitches. And just like before, we yarn over and bring this yarn through all 3 stitches. So, all 3. That's what we do. That's what a half double crochet is. Let's do that again. We identify the next stitch, which is this V. We yarn over. We go through both little loops. Okay. We yarn over again. We pull this yarn through the first loop only, and then we yarn over and go through the rest. Now we can do one at a time, so just 1, and then 2, and then 3. And you see we've got 2 new stitches. Amazing. So we can continue this one more time. We yarn over, we go into that next stitch, we yarn over again, right? So we've got these 3 loops. We yarn over again just in the first. We have 3 stitches, and then we yarn over and pull through all 3. And we continue this until the end of our row. Alright, so we finished our half double crochet row. And now we're moving on to our next stitch, the double crochet. Instead of chaining just 1 to turn, we must chain 3. And this is to account for the height of a stitch. Now we will turn our work around, and we do not go into the first stitch. So see it like this. This chain 3 represents 1 stitch. So instead, we're going to go into the next stitch, not this stitch. So this chain 3 is already this stitch. We can see it as that. So how to do a double crochet is we yarn over just like we did for the half double. We go into our stitch, just like we did before as well. We yarn over and bring through this first stitch, like before, and we've got 3 stitches. So now we're at the exact same point that we were with the half double crochet. But now we yarn over and go through only the first 2 stitches. Do not go through the last one. And then we yarn over again to go into the last one. And that's a double crochet. Let's do that again. So we yarn over, the whoosh motion. We go into our next stitch, right? We're going to both loops, remember? We yarn over and bring this through just the first stitch, the first loop. We yarn over, bring it through just the first 2, and then we yarn over again and bring it through the last 2, and that's our stitch. So we can continue this until the end of our row. So we yarn over into our stitch, yarn over through, yarn over just the first 2, yarn over the last 2. Again, we yarn over, go in our stitch, we yarn over again and bring this through just the first loop, then we yarn over the first 2 loops, and then yarn over the last 2 loops. And we continue this until the end of our row, getting every single stitch. So I have just finished this row, and these are our double crochets. Now we can see these are much taller than our other stitches and have more gaps. So these are the 3 stitches, our single crochet, our half double, and our double. Now, how do we finish this off? So say we finished our piece, how do we actually secure this? Obviously, if we just leave our hook off, this can run the risk of coming undone. So we must fasten our work off. I need some scissors to do this. These are yarn snippers, but normal scissors are fine. They're the exact same. And we're going to cut our thread a small distance away. Maybe a bit of a long distance away. And then we put our hook back into our hoop, into our stitch. And what we do is we yarn over and bring this through as if chaining, but instead we just pull it through until it's all through. We pull this to tighten it, and you can see now this is perfectly secure. You cannot get rid of this stitch, and this is how we fasten off our work. So the final thing I'll be showing you is how to weave in your tail end. So a tail end is basically just the yarn that's left over. Now you may think, can we not just cut this? No, we can't, because if we just cut this very short, the chance of the knot coming undone, and therefore our whole work coming undone, is very large. So we will need to sew in these yarns essentially. And we do that with what is called a tapestry needle. So a tapestry needle is essentially a sewing needle, just with a bigger eye. And now what we will do is we thread our needle. So we have 2 tail ends, right? Where we started and where we ended. We'll start with where we started. we thread our needle. You might want to really pinch the yarn because obviously the yarn is quite thick. And then we really just bring it through the eye of the needle. Perfect. And now what we need to do is sew in to the stitches. So what we're doing is we are passing this thread into these stitches so that it does not come undone. So we're basically securing it in. So what we do essentially is you really just want to put the needle in any stitches, right? So we're just putting it through some stitches, putting it through. You can see what we're doing, just putting it through some of these stitches. It doesn't really matter the way you do it, just this would be enough. This is the other side, what it looks like. And what we're going to do is simply pull the needle through. So pull it, and the yarn is then going to pull through, okay? So we secure this in, we pull this through, and then we just give it a little wiggle out, a little shake. And you see, this looks exactly like the rest of our work, but it has more yarn going through it. And now we can cut this. So what you do is you basically just bring it out a little bit, give it a snip, and then you kind of wiggle it back into space again. So you see now we've got no yarn coming out here, right? But it's been secured. So the yarn will have to travel through back all these stitches and then undo itself in order for the work to come undone from this side, which is obviously very unlikely. So this is nice and secured. So you can rest assured that this will not come undone on this end. We can do the exact same thing on the other side. So I have threaded my needle. And we're just going to go through the stitches again. You can go downwards, you can go sideways. I'll just go sideways. So really we're just putting this needle, we can see, through the stitches. There isn't really a set way to do this, you know, it doesn't have to be like in every single stitch, it's alright. So you see here, it's nice and secure, and we will simply just pull through this yarn. Okay? Give it a wiggle out, and then, like I said before, we will stretch this out a little bit, give it a snip, and then stretch this out. So you see, now we've got a piece with no tail ends, and it's all nice and secure. So now to look at the differences between our stitches. So this is our single crochet. This, we've done 5 rows, and it is quite tight, it's quite small. If we compare this to our half double crochet, this is much bigger. So this is our single. We've done the same amount of rows here, by the way. This is much bigger and has slightly bigger gaps. And finally for our double crochet, now this is even bigger, as we can see. Even bigger than our half double, and even bigger than our single. It's pretty much double the single, to be honest, but this has many more gaps, so it really depends. The stitch you do really depends on what you want in your project, but you can see that how many yarn overs you do really does depend, and really does affect the height of each stitch.
So now hopefully you feel confident about starting and doing a crochet piece. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye! Bye.